Many thanks again for rejoining us on our special coverage of the presidential inauguration on ITV Nigeria Network. My name is Sonny Duke. Of course, I'm not alone in today's program. I have Comrade Christopher Ojekere, is the program's director at Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. Comrade, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Sonny. Good morning.
We also have with us here Barrister St. Michael's Egwalgi, is a human rights lawyer, public affairs commentator. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Expectations everywhere. But there is a little bit of a difference compared to the euphoria that normally would greet a presidential inauguration of this magnitude. The one we're seeing now compared to what used to obtain in the past. And it looks like there's a bit of a closely knitted inauguration where it is based on invitation, as it were. Chris, could you take it off from there?
Yeah, such is expected following the wake of the presidential election. Up till now, a huge population of Nigerians still do not think that justice is being served with respect to the ballot they cast on February 25th when the presidential election was conducted.
All right, Barrister St. Michael, you want to lend your voice to that?
Well, what Mr. Christopher Ojekere has said, may not be entirely, far-fetched. Considering the fact that there are a lot of grievances, there are a lot of disputes, and contestation, surrounding the election, to the extent that tempers are still boiling, anger is still at a crescendo, and the DSS, the intelligence community, has come up to make us to understand that there are attempts by aggrieved individuals, to scuttle, the process, to the extent that several machinations, were put in place, whether, legal or otherwise, but they have not, succeeded thus far, going through the courts, to arrest the event.
Okay.
Since they couldn't succeed at that, there is this perceived, threat, concern that people who did not or who could not succeed in using the legal instrument to arrest the event could, come physically, to scuttle the process. Perhaps that is why, the event is taking place at an enclosed environment. But be that as it may, barring any legal impediments, the event will hold, it will take place, and a new president will emerge today.
Okay. All right, Christopher, we're talking about the inauguration. Before a few hours' time, the president-elect and the vice president-elect will be taking oath of office. Yeah. Now, for the president-elect, a lot is waiting for him, from the economy to security to the health sector to the educational sector. I mean, we are in a time when Nigerians are already on the red list. They are telling Nigerians not to come to UK again. And which aspect do you think the president-elect should start from, going to the fact that there are a lot on his table to handle?
Well, we would like to say thanks be to God that even though the last administration was a pathetic bathos, expectedly, they at least averted the disaster of, tampering with the sacrosanct date of May 29th. And many Nigerians are also of that opinion that we should not tamper with that sacrosanct date. Other things can follow after the, inauguration. So the court processes, Egwalgi referred to. Now, having said that, it is now assumed that a president will be sworn in today, and that president is going to take on the reign of governance. There are so many problems, and one of the problems is the president himself. His ill health is number one on the agenda list, which should be added to all the malaise that we have in Nigeria today. And we are not saying that without antecedents or without precedents. The former president came in there, also sick, and spent the first 1 year traveling for medical checks-up and medical treatment abroad. And that made him to have delayed appointment of ministers for almost 1 year. Now, aside of that, he couldn't come up with an economic policy for another 1 year. And so that made investors to be afraid, and they took their investments away from Nigeria because they didn't have a policy direction, economic policy direction. We are hoping that, God helping, the president, who already has a de facto, vice president in the person of his son, Sheyi, who has been in support throughout the election and is still support, even after the election. We are hoping that God will give him good head to be able to first appreciate the enormity of the devastation that was caused by the last administration. I'm talking of a situation where we have over 70 trillion naira as debts. And we have millions of dollars to service that debt. We are talking of a situation, that debt was in 12 millions by the time Goodluck Jonathan left. Now it is 70 million, so it just grows exponentially. Now we are talking of a situation where no Nigerians of any tribe work together again as one. A polarized, tattered nation because of fundamentalism introduced by the leader. And I'm saying all of this because it is difficult to separate the person from his government, from his method, from his policies, from his decisions. If the person is healthy and exposed and understands the problems and have a grasp on it, then that person is able to formulate policies that will take care of it. But if you have to be dealing with your health and you are dealing with your concerns that is existential because it has to do with your existence and your health, how are you going to be able to understand the situations, to be able to now come up with sound policies? You are likely going to be relying on the people who were the problems in the first place. Who are you going to make your ministers? What fresh ideas are they going to bring in? Look at those contesting for Senate presidency and so on and so forth. They've gone around administrative positions, and every of their record, with all due respect to them, have shown maximum corruption. Now, who are you going to make ministers? So all of these are the issues. To say that we have problems with life, we have problems with welfare, we have problems with education, with athletes on strike, we have problems with, that's the given. Every little child knows that. But the question now is the man that is going to be sworn in today prepared, both in terms of heads? Now, we have no doubt about his academic credentials, abilities and competencies when he was 20 years younger, when he was 30 years younger. How is he today? What is his head status today? These are the issues. It's not a party matter. It's not a partisan matter. It's a concern because Nigerians' problems are not where you come to begin to experiment now. You have to deal with the problem, take them head on. And you have to be healthy to do that. You have to be foresighted to do that. You have to understand, okay, now look at what we have, first of all. Even his vice president is an issue. We have a section of the country. I, for instance, don't feel that I'm represented in the presidency because the religion that I hold, which is my life, which is my first, I give my first loyalty to, even before my physical existence, which is my Christian religion, is not represented in the presidency. If the presidency is made up of the president and the vice president. If policies are going to be taken, there's going to be one-sided and it's going to be influenced by the religion of the president and the vice. Well, that is assurance. The outgoing man that was sitting there on the chair gave us a lot of assurances, and each of his assurances proved to be, a leap in the negative. He's a superlative disaster in all giving promises. So what we are saying is that assurances, we are not entering into the government and Nigeria of assurances. We are entering into the Nigeria where we have to see concrete, realities of the assurances you are giving translated into concrete realities for the people to begin to feel it. If you already have taken the decision, what was Wike, for instance, what is anger with the PDP? That the North is having the presidency and the North is having the national chairman. And he said he didn't feel represented in the party. Okay. And he worked against the party and in the states, we're using all means. Now, that same Wike is very comfortable that he is a Christian and his religion is not represented in the presidency. But we are not so comfortable, and many Nigerians are not so comfortable. We are not represented there. Why was he angry with that? Because he felt that if decisions are to be taken, it's going to be influenced by the pro-North, sentiment. And the same way it's going to be influenced by the pro-Islam sentiment. I was surprised yesterday. I was looking through the timetable of the GSS exam that they are writing from Tuesday. And I saw in the timetable as a subject, IROS, which is Islamic Religious Studies, counterbalancing CROS. That was fair enough. And I saw again Arabic, which is the language of Islam, as a subject. And it's being taught in Edo State. And there is nobody inside that class that is a Muslim. But because the policy, the national policy of education is drafted from the Federal Ministry of Education and from a minister who said he didn't know anything about education when Buhari made him a minister of education, Adamu. Now, Arabic is put there, okay. And my son have to be forced to study Arabic. He's not interested in Arabic. So these are the issues that the current president will come to was supposed to come and deal with. Questions of restructuring, questions of balance, questions of nepotism that have been a real issue in this country, that have polarized the country, and all of these issues. Now, how are you going to do that if you already have played a card of compromise from the selection of your vice president? Okay. So these are the issues that we are going to be dealing with.
All right, Mr. Gwagwe, quickly walk us through on the expectations from the incoming administration. Many times people say, look, we have too many problems. We already know what our problems are. We just need men, women, people of integrity, people that have the capacity and the ability to fix these problems. Do we have one in the offing following the presidential inauguration?
The time for campaigns are over. The reality facing us today is that elections took place. The winner was announced and declared by the institution constitutionally empowered and charged, to carry that saddle and mandate. Bury any last-minute illegal impediments, whether real or imagined. By 10 a.m., we will have a new president. Our responsibility and duty at the moment is to set agenda for the incoming administration. Okay. This administration has, first of all, the onerous task, to heal the country. The country has become more polarized and more divided. The country has never been more divided like this before in the history of this nation. So the administration, first of all, has the onerous task, to bring the dividing interests, together. And to be able to do this, we will need, a very strong leadership. Leadership that is communicative, that is expressive. We don't expect a leadership or an administration that is driven by monologue, like, the XY administration. We witnessed a president that was highly taciturn, that was always silent and quiet. A president who expects you to read his body language. Rather, him, coming out, to speak to the issues. I am shocked and perplexed that at the twilight of his administration, the man is now begging for, forgiveness.
And mercies.
Telling us that he's sorry that some of the policies, economic policies, he initiated and implemented, caused pain. If this man was saying this or doing this, perhaps 5 years or 6 years ago, there would be no need for him to, be apologizing to us now. The apology at this material point in time is dismissive, it's irrelevant. It makes no meaning, to millions of Nigerians because the harm had already been done. So we expect a government and an administration that will be driven by dialogue. If I were in the shoes of this administration, by today, the first thing I would do while reading, my opening or inaugural speech will be, to release Nnamdi Kanu by way of extending the olive branch, to a section of the country who feel isolated and discriminated. I would have done that, for example, even before, announcing making important appointments. Just, do the bold thing. Take that courage.
Okay.
To announce the release of Nnamdi Kanu. That singular action would have gone a long way to calmness, to moderate tempers, and to pacify, a sizable, section of the Nigerian population.
Okay. Chris, any government that is coming on board must be able to assess the revenue inflows to be able to make any impact in terms of changing the narratives. We have seen on a global scale a dwindling regime of revenue. Nigeria is not excluded. I mean, we've seen oil revenue, which is our major stay as a monolithic economy, drop drastically. What are your expectations in that regards? There's been talks about increasing tax. There's been talks about removing fuel subsidy, just so that these monies that would have gone into subsidy, for example, can be plowed back into the economy. That has informed the acquisition of another loan in the region of about $800 million that has been creating a lot of ripples here and there.
Well, honestly, these are not simple questions. These are complex questions. But one thing is for sure, if you have watched the antecedents of any administrator, especially if he has had the opportunity to serve before, and how he has dealt with his similar problems when he served, you can begin to second guess, Tinubu is a strong believer in taxation. In fact, his company, the Alpha Beta Consortium, it's a tax company, so to speak. So we are expecting that people should expect to pay taxes. And to a very large extent, you would want to ask yourself, in the immediate, is there any option, of generating revenue? As you said, the oil prices in the international market, Nigeria is not favored because our oil policy have been very poor. All the questions about subsidy, I've always maintained here that it's a scam. There's going to be a factor that is come on board now, the refinery of Dangote, that is going to start production in July, that is going to influence a lot, that economy, the oil economy. And that might, to some extent, provide some cushion, for the incoming administration. But there's so much to deal with. How much is Dangote going to be? I mean, it's an investment. He borrowed huge finances from international financial institutions to set it up. The stake of the federal government, there's only about 22%. So what's going to be coming from there into the federal revenue purse that will be able to take care of our educational problem, take care of our economic problems, security problems, and all of that. So people should expect to pay tax. It is not that tax is wrong and evil. It is whether taxes are being used, implemented, in such a way as the citizens feel that their taxes is working for them. In Britain, for instance, the British economy is run mainly on tax. They have no much mineral. They run mainly on tax. But the tax circulates, so much so that the poor is taken care of. Your social welfare programs, they are from the taxes. Okay. So if we are paying tax, if tax is one source of revenue for him, well, so long as we see it building the bridges, and we see it building the rails, and we see it developing the textile industries, and we see it developing the steel industry, then we have hope that as those economies, redundant economies, start to being viable by the fact that huge investments coming from taxes are plowed into it, then we'll begin to have economic prosperity and viability. That is what and how a nation is run. Now, the other place I expect him to exploit, and that's why I'm looking for a strong president. And I agree with what we need now is a strong president. And I'm not talking about strong presidency, a strong president that will result in a strong presidency. I am aware, and it was said on TV by Naijatu Mohammed, the lady who left him, when she was talking about what was going on in Zamfara, I mean on TV, public space, that containers come from China almost on a daily basis to come and take away our
raw materials,
minerals from Zamfara. And that is an airstrip that people landed. But the government is aware. He said the government is aware. He said all the ministers are aware. In fact, I have seen that airstrip, on a video that was shot by somebody long ago when it first started, and I thought it was just social media.
There were talks that those videos were actually videos from one of these South American countries known for drugs and stuff like that. And arms.
But every child in Zamfara, every little person from the north knows that is going on a daily basis. So we need a president that will seize that field. He's the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and I understand that by the federal constitution, that the land, according to the Land Use Act, land is vested in the state governor of the state. But the federal government has control over the state governors, and you have ways you can control it. So that in any case, it's not even the state governor that is even mining those resources. It's done by a collusion of some cabal and international, criminals. They are criminals for coming into our land to mine away our mineral resources. That's a huge source. We have over 400 different types of mineral in Zamfara, and all over the country. So that's a huge source of income. And the mineral deposits that are there are mineral deposits that are right now premium in the world market. Mineral deposits that are used for nuclear weapons, that are used for all sorts of technology that we need right now. So that's money going into the hands of foreign dubious people. So I expect him to seize that. And I expect him to concentrate also on agriculture. You see, the moment we are able to develop our agriculture to the point that we are exporting finished product, we have almost everything in Nigeria to produce. There are high demands all over Africa market and international market. But because we export our raw materials and they are resold back to us, that's why we are losing forex. If we do all the processing from the farming down to the full processing, I will do the value addition here, we have a lot to export. Okay. So he as a person, I must give it to him, is exposed. He understands these things. I don't have any problem with that. What I have problem with is whether he's healthy enough to be able to do this. But these are the things we expect a strong presidency to be looking at right now.
Okay, now looking at the fallout from the 25th February presidential election, the president-elect was on that balance. Now the fear of some Nigerians is this. He was on the balance, and he is going to be inaugurated today. Will the judiciary system be fair with the outcome of the election?
A lawyer, answer.
You are boxing with a corner.
A lawyer.
So I'd like you to respond.
I'm not a lawyer.
It's a very complex question.
Yeah, lawyer. I'm like.
To the fact that the president so being inaugurated today.
There's no conspiracy. There's no conspiracy at all.
The electoral process had always started with nomination of candidates, which leads to the primaries.
Okay.
And the primaries by the political parties eventually culminate into a general election. Results are collected, announced, either at the polling units, the local government level, at the state level, or at the federal level in respect of a presidential election. That usually is not the end of the process.
Okay.
The process terminates with, the court's pronouncements. However, there is a constitutional time frame provided for the lifespan of, these, court cases. At the level of the trial courts, you have 180 days while the appellate court has 60 days. However, the system does not allow for vacuum. That the process has not been concluded, by court pronouncements, does not mean that there should be nobody in the saddle. Nature abhors vacuum. The system, as we operate right now in Nigeria, abhors vacuum. So somebody must take the saddle, must be in charge. Whether, after that person is not effectively in charge, whether the courts will be able to have the courage, will be able to muster that courage, to do justice, in the issues surrounding, the process, and the emergence of the person who is now in saddle is another thing altogether. I am a student of history. If you follow our historical, jurisprudence in Nigeria, you will remember that in 2007, an election was generally adjudged, to be porous. It was a complete failure. In fact, that process was preceded by a popular saying from the then president, who said that that election was going to be a do or die affair. And it eventually turned out to be a do or die affair. The man who emerged, from that, process that was characterized by disputes, contestations, and what have you, summoned the courage to openly admit to the whole world that the process that brought him, was characterized with frivolities, was highly,
flawed.
Was highly flawed. Do you know, Mr. Sonny Duke, that in spite of that open admission, he still won at the Court of Appeal and won at the Supreme Court.
Okay.
You understand? So, as a lawyer, as an activist, I would like to advocate for an amendment of the Constitution, that will allow for a process, to allow for the electoral process to be concluded before, the winner will be sworn in. Because once the winner is sworn in, he takes the saddle. It becomes very, very difficult for you to uproot what has been planted. As far as I'm concerned, it is fate accomplished. It is signed, sealed, and delivered. It will be difficult to undo what has been done. That is where I leave it.
Okay, let's go to Dr. Chris Ojekwe. Asiwaju of 20 years ago, Asiwaju of 10 years ago, it's not the same as Asiwaju of now. But he was governor of Lagos State, and of course he performed excellently well, had the best hands that were in his cabinet. Don't you think he's going to replicate such now that he's the president-elect?
Well, that is what we are hoping. Now, you see, it's not just Asiwaju that changed. The society, the dynamics of society has also changed. And it was that dynamics of society that pushed and forced his hand to go and pick a northern running mate. Not because he, Asiwaju, in his convention as a NADECO boss and one of those advocates for restructuring would have done so ordinarily. It was political expediency. And that political expediency is a machinery. It's dynamic. It doesn't stop at pre-election or election. It goes beyond that. Because those who pushed for that also have their agenda. So what we are hoping is that he will be able, once he gets the saddle, there have been leaders like that in history, who after they get the saddle, they come to their own. They become who they are. Okay. And then they do some real things. Obasanjo did that. In 1979, he was a prophet. to 1983. But by the time he returned, in the second coming of Obasanjo in 1999, and especially from 2003, they knew who he was. And what he was able to achieve for the South, it's still appreciated today. He broke a hegemony. The hegemony is what Buhari tried to rebuild. And he has failed woefully. In fact, he has been declared as a national disaster by the Northern Elders Forum. So he broke a hegemony. You know, so that point we are making is that he may be able, should be able. We are hoping that will happen. But if some of those leads we see bandits as people who are warming up to be ministers, those establishmentarians, those establishment people, those people who don't think outside of the box, become ministers, they begin to cut deals. You know, there's a lot of power blocks now in Nigeria, and everybody's trying to hold on to his corner, you know, and can use it as a blackmail weapon. And for you, if you are not, you know, playing, you understand that? That's why you see that hardly any national chairman now stays for more than 6 months. I don't know how Damon is doing so in the APC. You know, every time you hear a national chairman, it's power blocks. So this power place will continue, but we are hoping that because, you know, with his clout and his reach, he will be able to identify and say, look, I am putting this here, I am putting this here. This is my policy, and that's what I want. We are hoping for that. Nigeria is praying for that. Nigeria is praying for that man who would, you know, wield that magic wand. That's what we are hoping for. Okay. Yes.
All right, Mr. Kwagi, I heard the outgoing president say his best legacy he's bequeathed to Nigerians is the electoral system that will enable Nigerians take their destinies in their hands. Does that resonate with you? Does it resonate with you?
That statement is with mixed feelings and reactions. There are those that will agree with you. There are those that will not agree with the submission, you know, depending on which divide you are. But as an individual, I believe this electoral process had its own gains and you know, setbacks. You know, some of the gains, you know, I witnessed, you know, was that it was, you know, very, very, you know, surprising, you know, to witness powerful governors running for senatorial offices and losing. For the very first time in the history of this country, drivers ran for offices. I mean bus drivers, you know, keke napep drivers.
And won.
You know, persons without resources at all ran for offices.
And they won.
Against person, you know, who had access to, you know, humongous resources.
Okay.
In Edo State here, Edo Senatorial District to be precise, we witness a person with no means at all defeated two Akpawangas put together. They were roundly beaten, black and blue. You know, if the electoral process was not fair, if it was not open, you know, if it was not transparent, you know, this, you know, couldn't have happened. I couldn't have imagined this happening in 1999, or perhaps in 2023, or even 2007. It is, you know, it's extremely unlikely, perhaps even impossible. You know, again, is that, you know, for the very first time, we saw, you know, the cabal, you know, attempted, you know, to supplant a governor in Adamawa State, you know, against their preferred choice. You know, somebody still emerged. The people, you know, held on tenaciously. They were opposed, you know, to the interests of the power brokers. Eventually, the preferred choice of the people, you know, prevailed. You know, these are some of the gains of this, you know, election. What are the setbacks? The primary setback I witnessed is that before this election, INEC, you know, made a promise. They made a vow a promise that was reduced into a guideline, wherein Nigerians were promised that immediately elections are concluded at the polling units, it will be announced right there. The election, the results will be transmitted via the beavers to IRF.
Okay.
That morning, why the election as it relates to the National Assembly was being transmitted, the one of the presidency could not transmit. Okay. They said there were technical glitches. Perhaps one would ask, is it that there was a different process that was meant to transmit the results?
Two different channels.
For the National Assembly, and a different channel was meant to transmit that of the presidency. It created a doubt, and it dented the entire process. Legally speaking, they may not have committed any omission or infraction, because the guideline itself, the provision itself was not the making of the act. Okay. It was a mere guideline. Even at that, the guideline did not create a time frame. It did not say that the result will be transmitted every time. It did not say that the result will be transmitted that day, within 2 days, or within 3 days. So there's already
a lacuna there.
A lacuna there. But however,
yes,
morally speaking, there was a gap. Morally speaking, there was an infraction. What INEC did on that day dented, the perception as it relates to, transparency, and it created doubt in the mind of the people, and it will take a whole lot to erase that doubt that has been created.
Okay, quickly, Chris.
Okay, now, just before we bring Chris Ojekere, let's just update you what's happening at the Eagle Square. We'll be back to continue our conversation on the presidential inauguration. Please stay with us.
This is the Eagle Square venue for the inauguration of President-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The Eagle Square is already very busy since we came in here as early as 6 a.m. So much has been going on here. Independent television, ITV, has been covering this event, and as you can see behind, the decoration and all have been done, and the screening is taking place. And the President of Pavilion properly fortified here, and the military guys on this side are fully set, fully prepared to actually make the brief parade here a very memorable one, as well as all activities are going on. We'll keep you posted as time goes on. ITV will be covering this live as it unfolds.
All right, thank you, Harold. Back. So good to have you back, giving us an update on the situation in Abuja with the presidential inauguration coming up in just a few hours' time. We're back here in studios of ITV Benin Network Studio to look at some of the issues that are undercurrent as relates to the inauguration and, of course, post-inauguration of the president-elect. Now, let me come to, Chris was to take a shot from praise, yes.
I wanted you to react. Continuity is one of the problems we have in the nation. When the successive government leaves, we find the incoming government not trying to pick up where from our government starts. President Muhammadu Buhari signed the not to run bill, and of course the Electoral Act. Do you think the president-elect will be inaugurated in a few hours' time? Will he continue actually where Buhari stops?
I hope there will be something that he will continue, because I don't know what was that was left, that was done to be continued.
Well, he promised that he was going to continue from where the previous administration stopped. Yeah,
I said that it's something, you have to get something somewhere for somebody to continue. The man is starting from 0 degrees.
In your opinion?
Yes.
Why did he do anything for these 8 years?
He completed the bridge Goodluck Jonathan started. Yes, I completed the rail line Jonathan. If that is what you call continuity. He succeeded in completing those 2 projects. But he made sure that for every project he did, he cancelled it by another terrible one he did. while completing the rail line from Lagos to Ibadan, he beat one to Maradi. The man should be standing treason. The man who has said 2 times that if Nigeria came for him, the Nigeria Republic would defend him.
He was joking.
He was joking.
Yeah. Was
he also joking when he said that the reason why he built rail line to Maradi is that he has cousins there?
Comrade, don't you have a sense of humor?
Well, you have just said that.
No, there's a new presidential
body language you read.
There's a new presidential spokesman.
This is body language you read. So, but talking about continuity, and that's on the lighter side. We are happy that he signed the Electoral Act. I mean, it's fine. Okay. We're also happy that you mentioned something else.
Of course, they're
not too young to run big. The man who is coming is a touted Democrat. I don't see him interfering with any process that has been put in place that is democratic. You don't have to interfere with the process. Obasanjo didn't interfere with the process. He interfered in the implementation. It is not whether you have our laws. Buhari that left there that did not obey one law, did not change any law, but did he obey one of them? It is leaving Nnamdi Kanu in prison, it's leaving the Shite man in prison. So on papers, nobody is going to interfere with anything. What we are looking at is whether in implementation, in your style of governance, in the actual things you do, in the reality of your governance, whether you are going to adhere to those things that are on paper. I know Tinubu to be a touted Democrat. He was a frontline member of NADECO. If you know what NADECO represents in the historiology of Nigerian politics. Okay. And he was at the front line. But the question is, as style, will he, by style, adhere to those things that are in the paper? If he's to continue with Buhari's, what you call continuity, that would be a disaster. Because the man did not adhere to anything that was on paper. Okay. So I'm hoping that he will change his style. He will change his style on human rights. He will change his style on obedience to the court processes. He will change his style on fundamentalism. He will change his style on polarization of the Nigerian society. And to some extent, I would say, for instance, the fact that he's able to have a Christian wife, even if people try to downplay that, and they are holding even services in his house, and he himself even attends church every once in a while. I have never seen anything to tie him to fundamentalism. He's a social Christian, he's a social Muslim who believes in the equity of religion. So he shouldn't continue with anything Buhari did. He should set up his own template, and his template will work better for us. Okay. Yes.
Let's quickly talk about a key component of a democratic setting. There is no democracy without the legislature. We know that from history, one of the key deficiency in a military government is the absence of the legislature. There have been questions around the qualities of those who are parading themselves to or aspiring to be in charge of the leadership of the National Assembly. What do you make of that as a big plank of compliment to the executive in delivering on the mandate, as it were?
Well, one of the fundamental features of any democratic process is the legislature. We have the executive, we have the legislature, and we have the judicature. Then we also have, the fourth estate of the realm. We have the civil society. These are the tripods upon which every democratic society, is predicated. Now, for the Nigerian democracy, to survive and to work efficiently and effectively, the legislative arm must live up to its responsibility as imposed on them by the Constitution. And the primary duty of the legislature is to make good laws, for the good governance of the nation. They play oversight function, on the executive arm to ensure that their excesses are moderated, to ensure that, we do not have, a tyrant or a despot or a dictator. Otherwise, if the legislative arm do not play their role effectively, the alternative become a despot, as we witnessed in the last 8 years. The National Assembly we witnessed in the last 8 years was a rubber stamp. If we witness anything, similar to that again in this administration, it will be a disaster. What I expect is that, we need an independent National Assembly. Even though they are not truly independent, there should be a semblance of it.
Okay.
And that is why personally, I am not a fan of, this idea of zoning and microzoning. It undermines the tenets of, the independence that democracy, permits or allow. The Constitution provides that once a new administration emerges, it becomes incumbent on the president or the governor to issue a proclamation for the constitution of the house. Then members shall, elect, not select, elect principal officers of the house that will, superintend and coordinate the activities of the house within the period allowed, by the Constitution. A situation where the party is not the one superintending, dictating who gets what, when, and how, it will lead to a process, that undermine, the outcome that we expect from a democratic process. So, personally, I am not happy with what is ongoing at the moment, where offices have already been zoned to, certain zones, microzone, such that, the campaign issues right now is it is our zone. We gave you
this,
the highest number of votes.
So we deserve this.
We deserve this office. You must, pacify us. This idea of political tokenism, it's not going to lead us anywhere. Okay. So I expect this administration, if this administration is going to survive and succeed, it should not, assign, portfolios, to people on the basis of how he emerged, on the basis of how much votes he gathered from this section and from the other section. Okay. I expect, this assignment and allocation of portfolios and offices to be on the basis of, strictly on the basis of competence and capacity.
It's like you're concurring to what he's saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Body language now, it's like you're in agreement with what he's saying.
Absolutely. Because, you can you imagine a house that has not been proclaimed? There has not been a proclamation from the president, already involved in internal politics, which has become external politics. Politics played within the party. Politics played with primordial sentiments. Now, if you, for instance, as a zone, give more votes to the president, and then you are giving Senate presidency, how does that translate to the zone's own progress? How does it translate to the people who actually have the vote? Was it you as an individual that is the zone? So why should you be the beneficiary of what the zone did? The office is not to the zone, it's to you as an individual.
Okay, Chris, we'll take a break now, and then we'll be back to conclude this conversation.
All right.